G'day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Brass on Tap. I'm so excited to be back, and I hope you are too. If you're rewatching, welcome back to the channel as well. As always, please, if you want to catch up on the previous 7 episodes I've had, head over to YouTube, and there's a playlist there. Look through them. I've had some incredible guests on, giving you loads of information for your inspiration. This is where I get it from. These guys, they're busy people, and they're giving up their time to come and chat with me, and hopefully you guys get inspired as much as I do to take it away and go work on your own stuff. Obviously, my next guest is an incredible trumpet player, probably one of the best international trumpet soloists this world has seen. Now, if you don't know him, let me just give you a little bit of an insight to Rex Richardson. Ladies and gentlemen, Rex Richardson. That is a little clip that I stole off his Facebook page. I hope he doesn't mind. Obviously, that is just a little snippet of the things that Rex puts out for free for people when you're just watching him. So honestly, come in here. If you're in here, we got a couple of people about that. For some reason, my computer unassigned you. That's always, I love technology when it doesn't work. It's brilliant. So.
Story of my life.
Yeah, tell me about it. Right, let me just have a play around here. So people, there we go. That way we're not looking up your nostril. So obviously you're a very busy man, so I thank you so much, Rex, for giving up this time to come chat to us and inspire us. So yeah, let's just, for the people that don't know you out there, I mean, I met you when I don't actually know how old I was, maybe 17, 18, when we were in Australia. You came out to do Stars of Brass, I think, with Brisbane Excelsior.
Oh, 2007. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. So in the end, yeah. So that was an incredible time, and obviously I met you and fell in love with what you do at that time. I think you came on and played Rising Sun, which was just blew me away. And yeah. And anyway, I pretty much right then and there was like what I'm trying to do with this channel. I went and looked you up and I bought your CDs, and you know, and it really did inspire me to become a better player, you know, and so it's so good that you're giving up this time to do this. But for the people that don't actually know you, Rex, just tell us a little bit about how you started. Obviously you're a professor in Virginia, aren't you? So yeah, you're also an international guest in, it's the Royal Northern, and aren't you also in Austria as well?
Yeah, I was. So I was the international tutor in trumpet, or one of the international tutors in trumpet. They probably had more than one at the time. I'm not even sure. At the Royal Northern College of Music in Manchester from 2012 to 2015.
Wow.
And because those are often sort of 3-year stints. And more recently, I was at this, the Jam Music University, Jam Lab. It's sort of an interesting name they have for this place in Vienna, Austria, which is great. They've got the regular trumpet faculty, includes Thomas Gansch from Nosal Brass. You know, I'm sure your listeners know Thomas, who's amazing. And then 2 other really amazing Viennese trumpet players, Daniel Nursig, who's a wonderful jazz player, and Anil Sumari, who is just kind of incredible lead player, commercial player. And so I was involved with that for a while. It's I'm not sure of the status of that because it's hard to travel now, and so
of course
all of that's kind of on hold for now, you know. But yeah, and I've been teaching at Virginia Commonwealth University in Richmond here since 2002.
That's amazing.
and that's sort of been my home base since then. Yeah.
So obviously you're inspiring many people around the world. Obviously teaching many people around the world. So how were your beginnings? Like who was your inspirations and your teachers that really got you into the player that you are today?
Yeah, well, first, thanks for the kind words and the amazing introduction. I should say that
That's all right.
first, Ben. It was really kind of you, man.
Thanks
And
for
when
lending
you,
me the video.
oh, no, thanks for sharing, man. I mean,
Yeah,
but when you get feedback like that, it's just inspiring to me. You know, it makes me, it's encouraging, it encourages me to continue. You know what I mean? When you
yeah,
feel
of
like
course.
people are receiving what you're doing and it's having a positive impact. So thank you.
You're very welcome.
But yeah, well, when I first started trumpet, initially it was not the most auspicious beginning in terms of inspiration. Basically, you know, I'm asthmatic, and when I was a kid, it was something of an issue with my health, and the doctor told my parents I should play a wind instrument, and my best buddy played trumpet, so I decided to play trumpet.
There you go.
And and then when I was about 13 or so, I started getting more interested in it. I wasn't in a musical family, so there wasn't that kind of a uh, environment for me where I'd naturally sort of be drawn to it. But I started checking out just recordings from my parents' record collection back then, and included like Herb Alpert and the Tijuana
Yeah,
Brass, and
brilliant.
some big band collections with like you know, Harry James and Doc and Bunny Berrigan, some of those
Oh
older
yeah.
school players, and some Louis Armstrong. So all this stuff, of course, was very interesting to me as a trumpet player. And then I used to watch the Boston Pops on TV, and I saw Andre Combe, who was the co-principal in the section back then, and Tim Morrison sitting next to him,
Wow.
and
Yeah.
watching those guys play, and they're playing C trumpets most of the time, and I'm like, something's different. Something's different. What's wrong with my trumpet? It doesn't look like theirs, you know. But even things like that could serve as sort of a intrigue and inspiration. And so it just kind of grew from there. I started buying my first recordings, which were of you know, Winston was coming out with his first recordings when I was about that age, and then I was checking out Rafael Mendez
Yeah.
and Freddie Hubbard, and Maurice Andre became a, you know, a huge hero.
Now, did I hear a rumor before you continue on that you used to try and imitate Maurice Andre, but using your B flat trumpet?
I did that did not go well, but I tried.
It's
I
brilliant.
didn't understand at the time what a piccolo trumpet was when I first bought his recordings at the age of 14, and so yeah, that was frustrating, man.
That's brilliant. So yeah, I mean that's your inspiration. It's so amazing, isn't it? Like I mean, there's not that much difference age wise. You know, like everyone around. Like where you are to where I am, you know, there's not that much, but I had the exact same inspirations you did. I had the Wintons and the Maurice Andres and the Raphaels and the Louis, and it's insane how these people, and including yourself, are just constantly inspiring. No matter you know, no matter what, it's insane.
Yeah, well, there's some of those figures. What's amazing is their staying power. You know what I mean? That,
Yeah,
you know, the recordings of Maurice. Some of the ones I was checking out were from the '60s, and same with Raphael, of course, because he passed away back then,
yeah.
and hearing all the other recordings. I mean, it just added up to Freddie Hubbard, Woody Shaw, Håkan Hardenberger came out with
Oh,
his first
yeah,
recordings a couple of years after that, and so all of it, you know, you see the staying power of those figures, and there are always new inspirational figures coming out who are getting international stature, you know, and thankfully now we're seeing more, you know, more women who are on the scene
oh
with
yeah,
real
very much so. Yeah,
prominence, and it's becoming more of a, you know, everyone is finding their place in this um, in this club of musicians, you know, which is wonderful. And so yeah, it's really cool. It's I think that's one of the cool things that um, connects different generations of musicians, is that we'll all go back and listen to Alpha Mendez and have our
yep.
jaws drop, you know, and same with Winton stuff, and you know, Sergei Nakiryakov, sorry for
Yeah, man,
massacring your name,
that's
Sergei, and the list goes on. It's a really wonderful thing to participate
Yeah.
in enjoying that music and trying to learn from it.
Yeah, it is. I mean, Mike Chappell's come along. He said Rex was the Rising Sun performance where you left the music in the UK.
um, it's interesting because I he may be referring to when I left the music, because when I showed up for our concert in Brisbane, I had lost my music,
Ah,
so I hadn't really planned to play it from memory.
that sounds familiar.
Yeah, and so I actually had at the time, I realized as I was leaving, I think for Australia, that I'd lost the music, and so I grabbed my recording that Jens had done.
Oh yeah.
Jens Lindemann, and so I joked with Jens later. It was like, so I transcribed a lot of Woody Shaw, a lot of Freddie Hubbard, and at least some Jens Lindemann playing
He would
Rising
have loved that.
Sun.
He would have loved that as well.
Yeah, you
Gotta
gotta.
love it. Gotta love
He,
Jens.
he was definitely amused by that. But that's how I actually memorized the piece for our
That's insane. I
performance.
didn't even know that. That's great.
Yeah, it's pretty funny.
So did you
But
have Oh, sorry, mate. Go.
I was going to say, in answer to Mike's question, I don't really remember what the concert
It
was
could have
before
been.
that,
So it might have been Mike.
where I would have lost it.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, thanks for covering, Mike. Any more stories? Bring them in. They're great. So
don't encourage him. Don't encourage him.
so obviously you're. I was chatting with a few guys that know you, and they said one of the best things that you do yourself is you just have a flawless way of being able to go from classical to jazz. Like you can break into both scenes almost in the like of one piece from another, and it's just like another player's walked in to the stage, and that's incredible yourself. So did you originally start as a classical player and then fell in love with jazz? Or I'm guessing by the sounds of your record collection that you always had a love for jazz that was sat there. But I'm just trying to figure out, did you start with classical?
Yeah, my training was entirely in classical. In fact, I don't have any formal training in jazz.
Awesome.
But I took lessons in classical trumpet in high school, and my teacher, Dennis Edelbrock, who's well known in the U.S., he was in the Army Brass Quintet in D.C. and founded the National Trumpet Competition, which has become a really important annual venue for trumpet players and trumpet ensembles. He was a wonderful teacher for me. I wouldn't have figured out how to fix what I was doing if it weren't for him. And then, but the whole time I was sort of on the sly a jazz fan, even when I wasn't sure I was supposed to be. I was always checking out my favorite jazz artists. And then when I went to school in Chicago, I started digging into jazz more. And I didn't really, I ended up getting my my undergraduate degree in anthropology.
Oh, wow.
So after my freshman year, I was just kind of on my own. I wasn't really getting lessons, and I was sort of free to do whatever I wanted. So I kept practicing classical music and learning repertoire, but I was really starting to dig into jazz more, going to jam sessions, grabbing sort of an informal lesson here and there from all the, as many of the great musicians in Chicago that I could. And it started to come together. But what made it possible for me to actually try to switch, sometimes even in the same concert, let alone from night to night, was the group Rhythm and Brass. When I got called by them in 1995, they were looking for a classical player who played jazz. And at the time, for the previous 3 years, I'd been completely steeped in jazz. So it was like, I'm not even sure I'm really a classical player anymore. But when I heard the recordings, I got really excited. This classical stuff reminded me of Empire Brass, and I was like, man, these guys, they sound so good. I would love to just take a shot at this, So I got some lessons from some of my friends in Chicago. Neil Bernstein, who now is in the Pittsburgh Symphony, he was living in Chicago at the time, and Kevin Hartman, who now I think is a professor in Milwaukee. Got some lessons with those guys, trying to get my technique back together, and it worked somehow. I managed to, to be able to win that audition and start playing with that group, and that was a really important part of my career, and that's when I started dealing with classical music and jazz, and really a bunch of different idioms too, because we weren't too set on classical or jazz or anything else. We loved, we were just finding artists that we liked and trying to present the music and doing some of our original music. So that ends up ranging from Johann Sebastian Bach. We love playing, a contrapunctus in our concerts to Beck Hansen, the alternative rock guy, to
Yeah.
Zeppelin and Floyd and some of
Nice.
those bands, and that was all kind of part of a musical education for me to learn to say, okay, I can function in this setting and this setting as well. But it's difficult. If I were to try to tell you it's easy for me, I'd be lying. I mean, it's always a lot of practice, a lot of
Yeah.
sort of trying to mentally prepare, and it's a difficult balancing act.
So how do you? So obviously you travel the world as an international soloist because you're a Yamaha artist, aren't you? Yeah.
Yeah, I've been with Yamaha since 1995. Also, at the same time I joined Rhythm of Brass, I became a Yamaha artist as well.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. And I mean, it's if it wasn't for them, obviously you wouldn't have done as much touring. I mean, obviously you would have, but they've obviously helped you out and got you out there, which is just incredible. So
Yeah, they've been really helpful, and having connections to all these different international branches has been huge. I mean, it's been a really wonderful relationship for me between the instruments, which I love,
yeah,
the support for education generally, and the support for the artists. It's been really really tremendous for me.
that's awesome. So thanks very much, Yamaha.
Yes.
So yeah, just going back on that, would you recommend? Because I mean, there's so many people. There's haters out there. Some people are haters, some people are likers. But would you? A lot of people say, look, you have to concentrate on one. You can't do both. I personally say, why not? You can do both. I want to get your opinion on this situation.
Well, I think it really comes down to the individual player, and it's not so much a matter of ability as it is interest.
Hmm.
If you have someone who's just really in love with orchestral playing, they feel like this is their musical home, and jazz seems like something kind of foreign and that doesn't really draw them in. Well, maybe they shouldn't be a jazz player.
Yeah,
You know what I
fair
mean?
one. Yeah,
Or
yeah,
or vice versa. If someone really feels at home in jazz and they find the other side, whether it's a classical solo repertoire or chamber music or orchestral music, they're like this, I'm not really feeling that, then maybe they should stay with jazz. I mean, there are practical considerations to be competent on all sides because, or at least until recently, and you could work more. Hopefully, we'll return to some kind of normalcy soon. I really hope. But normally it would mean you can fit into different settings. But I think on the more the philosophical level, it's about what draws you into the music. And in my case, you hear from the list of artists I was drawn to. I felt a fairly equal pull. I mean, if someone asked me, do you like Maurice Andre or Freddie Hubbard or better? I mean, I have no idea how to answer that. I mean,
well,
I love what both of them do.
they're monsters in their own league. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, and I felt drawn by what they were doing in both cases. So
yeah,
it's like I wanted to be able to play like Maurice. I wanted to be able to play like Freddie Hubbard. So in my case, I think it was appropriate to try for that.
yeah,
I don't think there's any reason you can't. The part of it is understanding what you're getting into. That it does take more practice.
yeah,
Simply put, I mean, it's than it would to maybe do one or the other, and even with more time, you still have to find ways to be extra efficient in ways in a way of sort of streamlining your learning
yeah.
because there's just each tradition is so rich and so deep that you can't downplay the difficulty of either side. Each side needs to be approached with a lot of respect and a huge degree of humility to really find that you can do well in trying to master
Yeah, I
both
mean, I
idioms.
think you just nailed it on the head right there with just humility. It's a thing that always comes up in this job as a musician, and a lot of my interviews actually. It's just being humble, just literally learning off everyone and just doing the best you can. And there's something to be said about that. If you don't mind, Rex, I've got a little video set up when you did Tower to Heavy D.
Oh,
You did a little solo with that, so I just thought I'd like to play it for some of my listeners so they can see you in the jazz form.
Okay.
Yeah, man. Yeah, laying it down. I love it. The that's great. It's a great recording. I remember finding that one quite a while ago. Yeah, just going back on that. So I had something lined up straight after that. Oh yeah, of course. You've during lockdown, you started. I think you jumped on a fad, which was just the 100 days of practice. And I don't know whether you started it. Did you start it? I don't know who started it, but I know you got involved in it. I know you got involved in it, and it was absolutely brilliant. So anyone listening out there or rewatching, either way, go check Rex out. Just put in 100 days practice, and I'm sure there's some videos floating around of some of the stuff he did. And on there, you went into quite a bit of jazz, actually, transcribing and going through it and making sure people doing it all 12 keys. It was really helpful. So for me, cool. Big thank you. But just on that, how did you find it? How did you find the 100 days of practice? I know you've been thinking about potentially bringing out a book or something similar along those lines.
Yeah, in fact, so I didn't get to 100 days yet, but
right.
one of the reasons is I kind of backed off on putting out the videos as I started entering talks with a publisher. And
Great.
The timing is good for this because I just today got the final version of the contract.
Oh yeah.
They're integrating digital forms of this, which I think is pretty new for them. So they had to make sure everything was working. So now I'm free to announce that I'm going to do 100 days of trumpet practice with Rex Richardson book with editions by BIM.
That's amazing.
Out of Switzerland. Yeah. So we're gonna do that. And one thing that's going to be associated with that is I'm going to record a whole new set of videos. Mm-hmm. So it'll probably, I imagine, be 100 videos, and it's not like this is going to be yeah, it is exactly. That's one reason why it took me a while. I wasn't doing it the way some of my friends and colleagues were doing it, like what I was watching what Mary Bowden was doing and Tom Hooten, and they tended to do a little more kind of straight documentation of their practicing with some commentary. I started getting into a little more in depth and saying, I'm gonna try to present this topic and explore it a little further, which meant more time, producing the videos and editing them. And once I got back into the semester with teaching, it started to become tough anyway. And then once I realized this book was probably going to be coming to fruition, I decided I should back off until the contract was signed and I could start figuring out how I was going to deal with the format. So yeah, it's been great. It's been a lot of fun, and it's been interesting seeing what people respond to. I I have there's certain elements of trumpet playing that I don't cerebrally know that much about. I don't really understand the mechanics of playing. It's not something I've really thought about other than through teaching.
Yeah.
So when I first started teaching, I was terrible with that. I really didn't understand why a kid might not be able to do exactly what I
Yeah.
could do.
There's not
And
many people that can. So yeah, that would have been
well,
confusing.
I didn't know that or not. I still don't know. I mean, I just
Yeah.
try to try to do what I do, but it was what I started learning is I started realizing, looking back at my own career, even at that point when I started teaching full time, I was about 32, 33, I guess, um, that I'd always loved practicing. Ever since I was a kid, I mean, I started practicing about 4 hours a day when
Wow.
I was 14.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what I was doing. I usually would just destroy my chops in doing that. But over time, sort of the science of practice has become really interesting to me. So while I'm not really good at telling someone to do with the lips and the tongue and all this kind of way of thinking about the mechanics, I feel like I have gotten pretty good at helping people figure out how to practice and how we learn. And so it's kind of a natural project for me, I think, to get into this book. But the side of things that I am very interested in cerebrally is sort of on the improvisation side, composition theory. I've always been very happy to get into the weeds with that stuff and the
Yeah.
details in ways that even a lot of my colleagues they're not always as interested in that as I
Yeah.
am. So I'm a bit of, you can definitely call me a geek when it comes to that side of things. But there may also be 100 days of jazz practice
Yeah.
coming out at some point. This initial book is going to be focused more on fundamentals and on the classical side. And I'm planning to draw upon the wisdom of a lot of my peers and get some quotes and some ideas about how
That's
to
great.
practice and integrate that with what I'm doing. So I'm hoping it'll turn out to be a really nice project.
It's that is an amazing idea, and I can't wait for it to come out. It literally is. I look at myself now and I go, oh, if I was a kid these days, having YouTube and this, and then like you're bringing out that book and what I could have had access to, being a kid. Like I'm excited as an adult, but if I was a kid, it would have been. So if any of our younger guys watching out there, like keep your eyes down at this because that's going to be a game changer. It really is. So that's great, Rex. If when it does happen as well, please send me the link and I'll add it to this video so that people can find it straight
All
away.
right, I will for sure. Absolutely.
And obviously you're teaching, you said. So I'm guessing you're, from what you told me, you're teaching either side of this interview, which is very grateful for you coming on. So where can people find you for lessons and stuff? How can they contact you?
Well, I teach. My job is teaching at Virginia Commonwealth
Yeah.
University, where I teach jazz and classical. I'm not doing a lot of teaching besides that,
Okay.
just because of the schedule. And normally it'd be touring that would be kind of interfering with that.
Of course.
But I'm thinking of trying to add some more because sometimes there's some inquiries, But the best way to reach me generally is if we're connected on social media, you can do that. But probably email, just kind of old-fashioned email, because I can manage the folders a little
Yeah.
easier, and I'm less likely to fold on a communication. And the best email address is probably rex@rexrichardson.net.
Brilliant.
Don't send it to .com. There's someone there
He's getting a lot of emails.
who want at least I've lost at least one gig because of this guy, because someone emailed rex@rexrichardson.com, and the person, instead of saying, I think you have the wrong guy, he just said he wasn't interested. Apparently very rudely.
Oh no.
And so it's a funny story, because then I ran into this person who then they met me and they're thinking I'd sent this message, and they were kind of cold to me, and I'm like, what is up with this guy? And he's like, yeah, you kind of blew me off, man. I'm like, I don't even know what you're talking about. And then we realized what had happened. He sent an email to this wrong address, and the jerk who responded didn't say, hey, it's not me, man. Make sure you find the guy. He just pretended to be me, I guess. And
exactly.
so yes, .net,
.net.
not
Well,
.com,
what I'll
just to
do is
make sure.
I'll add that to the video as well once it's processed, so,
Okay.
yeah, so people definitely go to the right one.
All right, cool.
Mike Chatbull has said he's not allowed to tell any more stories. So Al King's joined us. Nice to see you, Al. He said, oh, sorry, it's this one. He says, I think we are all geeks. I love learning and I can't get enough. So yeah, I think we are,
Awesome.
honestly, and
Love that.
that's why we're doing this, because honestly, I learn the most when I'm just sat around chatting to people, and it's some of the best
Me
things to
too.
do. Yeah.
Yeah, me too, for sure.
So let's just cover on a bit of your touring career. As you just said, you know that you tour a lot. You know, usually in a normal year, what percentage would you usually say that you're away touring?
I would say generally it's maybe 4 to 5 months a year. I'm usually traveling, and it's maybe on a rare occasion it might have it's just been as high as maybe 6 months out of the year, and it's usually broken up into fairly small trips. I think last year was pretty hardcore over the summer, where I remember I was gone for a week in Italy, a week in Finland, doing the two festivals, Italian Brass Week and then Liexa Brass Week. And then I was home for 10 days, for 10 hours, home for 10 hours before flying to
Wow.
South Korea for the Jeju International Wind Ensemble Festival. And so that was about a 4 week chunk of pretty much being gone the whole
Yeah.
time. But that's pretty rare. Most of the time I'll be gone for international stuff. The tours maybe will be 10 days or less if I can do it. And many times for domestic, it's 5 days a week or even less than that. And I do prefer it. I mean, I love being home, my wife, my dogs, and so short trips generally are better for me.
Yeah. So obviously traveling for so long, people out there must be going, like I am sometimes. I think you and I touched a little bit on it when we were together, but I'd love to hear more about it, which is, how do you keep up your routine? So obviously you're like, people who don't know, we'll touch on, I've got a little clip that just to play some of the stuff that you do, one of your cadenzas. I think I'm either going to play the Cyclone cadenza, or I'm going to play you did a opening cadenza for the All National trumpet in Indiana. So I'll play one of those two just to give people an insight on what you sort of do, in a general craziness, just part of your craziness of your shows. But for me, your chops, like you're a very natural person. Like I'd love to ask the question of, have you always had the flexibility you have? And if not, how do we go about that? But the main question I want you to touch on, if possible, is how do you maintain your chops to be that flexible? You know, like if someone has a hard day on the chops, for me, sometimes you get some swelling, sometimes you don't. I mean, obviously a good warm up, warm down is, you know, I'm guessing what you do, but if you can dive into a little bit of that, that'd be great, please, mate.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think one thing that's maybe important for me to point out is that my flexibility when I first started training it was terrible. I mean, I was 14 when I started studying with Denny Ederock, and I could barely slur from his C to an E in the staff.
Yeah, right.
I mean, there's a little break there, you know, we run
Yeah.
into when we're kids. But if I used every muscle in my arms, I could. It was terrible, man. So Denny's two main objectives with me were to get me to release the death grip on the trumpet and to develop flexibility. And so I developed it really using his exercises, which were very simple and which made a huge difference in my flexibility very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as I'm concerned, anyone can do the stuff I'm doing. It's just, you know, it's just like kind of spending enough time working on those kinds of exercises to open up your flexibility.
Yep.
You just start where you are and go from there. You know, as far as the maintenance goes, these days I barely practice flexibility, even though it was really crucial for me in high school when I was a teenager, because it just seems to stay in my chops. And so much of what we do, so much of what we develop, we understand now more about this over the past couple of decades. You know, there are neurological changes, right? When we learn skills.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of what we're developing when we develop skill on the trumpet. So what I find in my case, I practice more articulation. I practice fingers when it comes down to kind of really nuts and bolts technique, because those are things that do get away from me if I'm not practicing them regularly. For now, the flexibility is fine. It may change. I mean, a year from now, I may have to switch the focus
Yeah.
again. So I'm part of what I always do is I try to keep in mind this sort of self-diagnosis is like, what's easy, what's not, what do I need to stay on top of, and what can I relax about. When it comes to maintenance on tour, a lot of times there's a lack of predictability in terms of what I'm going to be able to do in terms of practicing. Am I going to have lots of days off with access to a nice room? Is it going to be a manic schedule with no access to a real practice room? And is it all going to be just warm ups with like sometimes a practice meet in the hotel room or even on the plane?
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll do that for long haul trips. And so what I rely upon mostly is the way I practice at home. I tend to be playing very heavily at home and developing whatever conditioning for the facility and stamina that I'm going to need on the road. And because I mostly have short trips that are almost always 2 weeks or less, it's sustainable. Once I get out for 2 weeks and I'm not really having regular practice, I start to feel it. And I'm like, yeah, I have to do something, get me a room somewhere. I got to start dealing with this stuff.
Yeah.
But until that point, I tend to stay pretty relaxed with it and rely on what I've done at home
Hmm.
to sort of bolster me and keep me in shape while I'm on tour.
That's great. Leads me on to another question. Has there ever been a time you picked the trumpet up and it hasn't worked? And if so, how did you go, right? What did you do to sort of get yourself ready for that?
Oh God, yeah, that's
I mean, it's a battle in
more
it every day with a trumpet.
more times than I can count. I mean, there's one of the things we face with travel and with different kinds of concerts is there are our chops get taxed in different ways, and it's often very hard to predict. One of the hardest times I ever had was in 2013. I was in Eastern Europe for this would have been maybe a 10-day trip or something in Eastern Europe. But half of it was with Croatian Radio Television Jazz Orchestra. We made a CD from that concert, but it was these two massive pieces I was playing. One is the Intercontinental Concerto, this 42-minute, six-movement concerto for
Holy smokes.
trumpet and jazz orchestra. And I'm playing slide trumpet, piccolo trumpet, flugelhorn, cornets. I even used
Everyone, we're back. Massive apologies. My internet dropped. Again, technology. It's great when it works and it's not when it's not. So, but we're back live again. So if you continue where you were, thanks, Rex.
Sure. I'm not sure where things dropped off exactly, but I was I'll do briefly. I was doing this concert in Zagreb, Croatia, with a very heavy program with the Croatian Radio Television Jazz Orchestra. Two huge, very physically punishing pieces, and then immediately after that, I had to do a concert in Sofia, Bulgaria, with the FM Classic Radio Orchestra, which I also ended up recording with. I did a concerto in 2000, recording with the classics, Hummel, Haydn, Tartini. That's a recording that came out in 2017. Basically, some of my favorite Baroque and classical concertos. But that concert was really, I did two concerts with them after that, and I was just so beat up from the Croatian stuff, and it was such a different kind of playing, because I think I was playing the Albinoni Concerto at St. Mark and the Tartini with the Bulgarian orchestra in the first half, and the second half is jazz with a rhythm section and arrangements for orchestra. And so that was especially difficult. And a lot of my practice in Bulgaria was all about just trying to heal my chops. It was all about trying to get fresh blood in there to heal the damage I'd done in Croatia. But that was really tough. I remember it was a real struggle, especially that first concert, to get through that first half, because everything just was not working the way it normally does. So there's a challenge here and there. I mean, over the years, I've gotten better about anticipating what it is I'm going to face and preparing. So there's a combination of preparing for the stamina challenges that you're going to face. And what I found was often important is the rehearsals that might beat up my chops if I wasn't careful. It wasn't really the concert. So making sure I was actually conditioned for the rehearsals, and if I was ready for the rehearsals, then usually the concerts would be fine.
Yeah.
And trying to find that balance between not being conditioned enough and being over conditioned, and so there's always that delicate balance where you're prepared, but you've got enough freshness to your chops to deal with whatever the physical challenges are that you're going to face.
Yeah, that's incredible. It's amazing to hear someone. I mean, well, having to deal with a 42-minute concerto is pretty insane on all different instruments. So, it's, before we move on from that, do you have? Is there a way that you rehearsed to be able to change between instruments so easily, between piccolos and different keys? And have you rehearsed that, or is it just something that you sort of find a little bit natural?
Well, I started doing that. There was something else I learned with rhythm and brass starting in 1995, where they would have pieces where I'd have to just sort of flip through different instruments. And at first it drove me a bit crazy. And I was trying to be more methodical about it. And I started realizing it's too complicated to decide I'm going to play this way on one instrument, that way on another one. I need to just learn to respond to the natural resonance of each instrument.
Mm-hmm.
So because you know how it is when we pick up an instrument and we pull it up, we breathe, it's relaxed, and we just make a sound,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it just rings and it's in the center. That's what we want for each instrument. It just feels a little bit different. Someone who picks up the piccolo like they're about to play a low G on the B flat, and they're using a find,
Yeah.
it backs up on them, right?
Yeah.
and this is one of the first mistakes young players make when they start playing piccolo. So what I started doing was often practicing in the room. I would just learn to pick up rooms with different instruments without test notes and start playing the passages, just going right into it.
Straight into
and eventually it just started to feel more natural. And so these days that doesn't tend to be much of a big deal. But when I started doing it, it certainly was. It was quite a stumbling block for that kind of playing.
Yeah, I mean, you get some crazy stuff written for you, like a lot. I remember when I was chatting to you, and I mean, how much percentage would you say of stuff that you play? It might even be 100%. Is all stuff that's been commissioned just for you?
Oh, it's usually not necessarily 100%, but it really depends on the concert.
Yeah.
Every now and then, I'm still asked to do, or was asked to do. Who knows what's coming up now?
Well, exactly.
But I used to do some of the traditional concertos, and it can feel like kind of a bore, the idea of maybe playing Haydn or Hummel and some of these pieces. But to me, it's like I love that music, just like I did when I was a kid. Yeah, and if you're playing with a good orchestra and it's a good musician on the podium, what a joy to play this music we grew up listening to. I still love that. But really, where my heart is now is playing the music that has been maybe crafted more to my own personality, I guess, on the trumpet, so to speak. And because usually I've had some small part in that creative process. So there's Alan Bazzudi's Three World Winds, one of the, I think probably his most recent concerto, which is very difficult to play, but is quite enjoyable. Jim Stevenson's concerto. These pieces are, when I'm asked, what you want to play, it'll be one of those pieces, or Andy Scott's Freedom of Movement. A lot of the repertoire from that newest CD, I would probably choose. On the other hand, there's a whole jazz side of things where I've got some of my own compositions, and there are some other compositions written for me, and then some of them are just charts that I like to play.
Yeah.
So there's usually a bit of a mixture between maybe some standards and some originals on that side, and so it's quite a mix, really.
So before I play this, because you just mentioned Alan Bazzudi's new piece, and I was going to play the Cyclone Cadenza just to show people a little bit how nuts this piece is. You and I were chatting a little bit previously when we were together about your relationship with Alan, but not many people will probably know. So could you just dive, because you are one of those people that are playing stuff that Alan, like, so there's some kids out there that watch Alan Bazzudi play and they just go, where I'm gathering you watched it and went, I want to do that. And now you are. Like, is that how it worked? Or
I kind of had both reactions. You
It's a
know,
bit hard.
I
It's a bit
still
hard not
do,
to.
man.
Yeah, yeah. I know
I,
he's
I
incredible.
still do every time I've I had the privilege of sharing the stage with Alan. It's the effect never really goes away.
No,
He's truly
he's
the real
yeah,
deal. But what's really amazing about Alan is that he's as good a person as he is a trumpet player. He has all the integrity you could ever hope for, everything you hear about his musicianship and his command of the instrument, his writing skills as a composer and as an
yeah.
author, all these amazing method books. I mean, that's him, man. It's all the real deal. I've never met anyone more generous to colleagues, to kids who are musicians. I mean, he's just
Yeah.
one of my favorite people, as well as one of my favorite musicians.
Yeah, he's an incredible guy, and I really hope that one day I can get him on Brass on Tap. Just need to get
Oh
on to him.
yeah.
So and just but not pick his brain, just literally chat to him and be inspired. So, yeah. So how about we? I think this might have been a bit of a backstage one shot. You think you might know what the video is, and it's just the end of the cyclone movement, and it's the cadenza that you do just before it moves on.
Okay.
There you go, folks. Just as easy as that. What's going through your brain when you're doing that? I mean, I know it's cadenza and everything, but I'm guessing you sort of know your little shape and form about what you... So like, this is what I want to do. And then is it just... Yeah, it goes, okay, I'm going to go up, down here, double octave tonguings. Like, is it all set out in your head, or...
It's almost kind of like maybe a menu
Yep.
of different things that have been shed in practice a bit. I'm just not sure which of them are going to show up.
Fair one.
And how and which transpositions necessarily, and how they'll be strung together. And that was actually, I know we're dressed very informally, but it actually was a concert. It was with the Spanish brass. Their Alzira festival. They had a large ensemble, and man, it was amazing to play with those guys because the whole band is incredible. And then they had a number of top players from Spanish orchestras. Luis Gonzalez, who is man, he'd be a great guest.
Yeah.
For the show. He's just a wonderful guy and an incredible player. So he's in this section of the other cats. So this arrangement, and with a Thierry Khan on the podium, I'm like, oh man, this is a heavenly situation. So they made it so easy to play that hard piece that by the time I got to the cadenza, I was like, well, I'm not that tired this time.
Yeah, I can do everything. Let's go.
And so it felt fresh. I felt like I could kind of maybe go a little more over the top with it than I might normally. And so that's how it's put together. There's usually a repertoire of multiple things that might show up.
Yep.
And I'm not sure which of them will be called upon, I guess.
Yeah.
And we just hope it hangs together with some kind of coherent, in some kind of coherent fashion.
Yeah.
By the time it's all over.
Yeah. It's the fluidity of your being able to just jump. very similar to Alan. Alan does the same thing, but it's just being able to just pop up. And you did put up a video. I think you were playing the Hornega, I think, about going from low G up to C and just making it as fluid as possible. That was a great video to watch and listen to. And
Thanks.
is that the kind of stuff that you would prepare, or would you, when you were younger, were you doing like proper octave stuff? Like, how would you prepare to sort of be able to access, well, technically, what, a three octave range maybe in a split second?
I'm not sure if it's that wide. My math's not very good, so
Yeah.
but it would be, what it comes down to is ultimately it's that development of flexibility, I think. But it does start with concept. So when I was listening, I think I was 15, when my band director gave me a cassette tape of Alan, the Red Metal Band. He was playing Zigzag. So that, all the octave jumps he was doing. So of course I had the normal jaw drop kind of reaction, but then I started trying to play it, and so Alan was one of those guys that made it seem to me like, well, this is something we should be able to do, and I didn't realize at the time just
how hard it was,
how unusual it was. And but in trying to develop, starting with narrow interval flexibility, going for speed and fluidity, and then expanding to wider interval flexibility. Okay. So this is all focused on slurred stuff, slurred patterns, and then being able to add articulation and keep the same kind of connection. So I was practicing those particular things, and also making sure that whatever I was playing, I always wanted to be able to go down to that low G or F sharp and keep it fat and connected. I never wanted it to lose resonance, no matter where I'd come from. If it was a couple octaves higher or whatever, I'd still wanted to have that.
So how would you focus on that without your lips spreading too far apart? Like, what would you actually practice?
What I thought about was when it came to we'll see how this works sound wise here, but let maybe do a quick sound check, see if this is all right.
Yeah. Yeah, I got you. Go for it. No, I'll control it.
Okay, cool. So when I go down to the range, what I realized was working for me is if I didn't let my corners collapse, but I feel like my jaw is opening just a hair, and it's maybe just a millimeter or two.
Yeah.
So as I'm changing ranges. So as I get into that bottom range, there's just a little bit that open in the jaw, but the corners can't go flabby. Otherwise, I lose control of everything.
It's almost like a slight furl as well. Your chops just furl out a bit, if you know what I mean. Like they're just going dee or sort of
Could
thing.
Be.
It's really intriguing because for someone who has seen you literally, I think I was sat about a meter away from you doing it, and it was just all here, and it was just incredible to just watch you access multiple things on multiple instruments. I think you played piccolo, trumpet, and flugel on that gig, but it was the same. It's all here. It's all the setup, and I know it's just down to the hard work that you've done to set yourself up like that. So,
and I think a lot of it, Ben, comes down to so much of what we can execute comes down to concept.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times when kids are trying to learn to play some more technically challenging things or playing the high register, it's a bit abstract. It's like the idea of a high F.
Yeah.
Let alone like a above high C, or let alone a double A or something. It's like, for me to really have a pretty good double high A, I want to listen to Wayne Bergeron's
of course
double A. So I want that sound and that color to be what's driving me, rather than this idea of what the note is. You know what I mean? Or if I'm going to play wider interval stuff, it kind of needs to make sense to me in sort of the mind's ear.
Yep.
Because I think that's the first step. It's like all of our technique can be driven that direction if we can hear it clearly. But I think a lot of times younger players are not maybe getting a clear enough there's a certain concreteness in the concept when you can really hear it. While if you're seeing something on the page or you're just imagining what this high note is, it's not the same.
Yep.
You know,
Agreed.
and
Yeah.
and I think that's what drives so much of it is just a really clear concept of what it's going to sound like in the end result.
Yeah, and I also think it may be a little bit of fear. It's like when someone gets started into, just the Haydn, just a basic Haydn, oh, but that's an E flat, and like they've psyched themselves out about two lines above, going, shit, the E flat's coming up. Shit, oh no, the E flat's coming up, and then they get to it, it's and it's because they've thought about it for all this time instead of just concentrating, trusting themselves, and just blowing through it, and it works. So,
Absolutely,
something to be hearing it in the head, as you just said, hearing it here. Would you go to a point of vocalizing it? Have you ever done vocalized training with your guys?
Yeah, absolutely. We what I try to get people to do is, if there's any sense, like sometimes you can hear when a kid they can hear it.
Yeah.
It's clearly in their ear, and anything that's hanging them up maybe is something else. But man, probably 75% of the time when something's not working, it starts with them not hearing it clearly, whatever it is. If it's the interval, if it's a tone color, if there's something about, what the range of the horn. So getting them to sing it, and typically, of course, in a different octave, different tempo. In my case, if I'm singing something, I have to change ranges all the time because I have neither a high register or low register when I sing. But I do tell my students, it's like, man, at some tempo and in some octave, I can sing everything I play with very bad technique. Still, I can do it. I need to ascertain that I can hear it, otherwise it just won't come out.
Yeah.
So that's the first step. And then lots of times the next step will be being able to play it on the mouthpiece. Same kind of thing. We can't always expect to have the same dexterity on the mouthpiece, but if you're playing under the mouthpiece, then you're one step closer in terms of the technique of sound production from singing, one step closer to playing the instrument. It's not exactly the same, of course. How we resonate, how we play, it's not exactly the same, but it moves us that direction. And if you can execute something well on the mouthpiece with a nice sound, chances are it's going to come out pretty easily in the trumpet because you can hear it and the basic mechanics are working.
Once you get a bit of resistance from the instrument, I guess that'll help as well. Once you're in, if you can do it on the mouthpiece, a bit of resistance, and it will become easier. I mean, obviously, touching on a bit of mouthpiece practice, some people go for it, some people don't. One thing I've discovered with either sometimes, some days it's fluffy for me. But with certain students, there might be kids out there or one of our younger audience that they're like, yeah, I do mouthpiece practice, but it's really all it is mainly air and a little bit of sound. Is there any techniques you can sort of like a little exercise or something that you reckon would be able to focus the sound a bit more on the mouthpiece for them?
Yeah, I think, well, it's an interesting thing with mouthpiece practice. It's a little bit almost like free buzzing, where it doesn't really work for everybody.
No, yeah.
Even everyone who can really play. Like, apparently, I've heard that Tim Morrison, who's one of my favorite trumpet players, like he can't really buzz his mouthpiece. I mean, I don't think Tim's playing anymore, but he's absolutely incredible player. He had an unusual setup because he had this kind of setup, and apparently it didn't work for mouthpiece buzzing. And I can't free buzz at all. I mean, I'm terrible at it. So I say this cautiously because it may be that a kid doesn't need to make a huge deal about it if the mouthpiece isn't really working for them. But I think lots of times it starts with just starting in the middle register and just trying to make the sound work. Lots of times with air attacks. And lots of times for me, when I start off, the first note of the morning is I'll play a B flat on the mouthpiece.
Yeah.
And sometimes it won't even come out. It's terrible. Everything's swollen or it's but what I do is I just kind of keep playing until it comes together, until the focus happens.
Yeah.
Because sometimes people just give up a little too early too. They're like, it sounds bad. I'm gonna move on to something else. But if it's something that matters, I think you want to stick with it until you feel it start to come together. And I learned part of that from hearing about Håkan Hardenberger warms up, because he goes through some of that same process where he says when he starts, he doesn't know what it's going to sound like.
Yeah.
And sometimes we get this grainy kind of crudeness sound. It's hard to imagine with the beauty of the sound that guy produces.
Yeah.
But so it might not sound that cruddy to us, but still for him, it's not what he wants, and he kind of sticks with it until it starts to come together.
It's so,
and that may be all it is. You know?
yeah, it's so good to hear that people, well, not good as in, you know, we're ecstatic that you deal with this, but it's great to hear that you guys are human, you know, all, you know, Harkenberger, yourself, you know, I mean, I'm guessing Vizzuti may have fluffed a note eventually in his life, you know, you know what I mean? Like,
well, that's funny, man. It's like the more I've spent time talking, you know, with Wayne Bergeron and Alan and so many of these folks that have been heroes to me. Reinhold Friedrich, I've really got to hang out with him for the first time last January, and Vince DiMartino, so many folks. I've never spent a lot of time with Håkan. I've met him a couple of times. We were in the same festival at the Royal Northern.
Yeah.
And I was just ecstatic to hear him live, of course. But it's like all these guys are human, man. They all have days. I mean, it's the kind of thing, sure, if Wayne Bergeron's having a crummy day, and maybe that we can't really hear it.
Yeah.
You know, and it's not the same kind of crummy day that maybe a high school trumpet player, a teenage trumpet player is going to have. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's still, there's still variability, you know, and none of those guys is a robot. They're not. They're all human. They all make mistakes. They all have good days and bad days. It's just at the general level that the sort of decades of hard work and discipline and focus, the general level is so high that those bad days don't seem like anything at all to us, you know, and that's just part of the equation, I think, you know.
Yeah, of course. I mean, one of my favorite things that I heard in a workshop with Chuck Finley when he came to the UK, and we all sat there, and he was going through his warm up, you know, and he's saying, this is what I like to do, you know, and he works that way. And as you said, just gets in there. Sometimes it doesn't come out, you know, sometimes it does, and just waking the chops up. And then he all of a sudden goes, you know, and it was fine. It sounded fine. But it just didn't sound like he was warmed up yet. And he just goes, but you know, if I need to do it, I can. He just goes, it's just like, what, you know? He's like, I can do it. I can just ram it on and do it. You know, he's probably one of the most recorded artists in the world, isn't he? You know, Chuck Finley.
Absolutely,
he's ridiculous trumpet player. Such a beautiful man as well. But just hearing him do that and go, this is what we like to do. It was a brain opener for me to just sort of go, okay, every day I'm going to try to play the best way I can, but if I need to, I'll just get on with it, you know, just boom, do what I know works and just get on with it. So
yeah, I think that's important too. What we want to keep in mind is that so much of what we do is about habits, you know.
Yeah.
If every day in, day out, we're like, I don't feel like doing my maintenance, I'm not going to deal with long tones or bending tones or articulation or flexibility. These are the things we need. Well, I hit a little bit of it, but I'd rather just pop off some high notes if that's how you start your day.
Yeah.
You'll probably start to pay for that, you know.
Yeah.
But sometimes we don't have ideal circumstances. You know, you're driving to a session or a gig and there's traffic, or you can't, something that you didn't anticipate, where you may not be able to say, hey, hold on, guys, I need 90 minutes to get my chop set up before we start the session.
90 minutes.
You can't do that. You got to be like, I got to hit, you know, and later on in the day, I'll still go back and do the maintenance routine and sort of keep that sort of discipline element while still being loose when the demands, you know, require us to do so.
Yes,
you know?
Yeah, that's great. Alice, thanks for joining us. Alice Ward's joined us. He's got a question for you. He said, hi, Rex. He goes, what's your opinion on practice mutes in this time of lockdown and indoor practice?
Yeah, I think for most of us, practice mutes are a necessary, I hate to call them a necessary evil because that seems really harsh, but
depends which one you use, I guess.
Right, exactly.
Obviously Yamaha for you.
I've got two favorites. I've got my high tech, you know, favorite if I'm actually trying to produce a concert hall aesthetic and all that, or atmosphere rather, is the Yamaha silent brass.
Yep.
And my low tech favorite is the Schmute. If I just want to pop something
It's
in
brilliant.
there,
Yep.
it's a little. I a little worry when I use a silent brass. If I drop the mute or something, there's a mic in there. While the Schmute is, it's not that kind of a thing, and it's also it feels good with the back pressure. Both mutes really do feel good, and they don't distort the pitch. So I think that's the most important thing. Whatever you're using, is try to make sure, insofar as it's possible, there's as little pitch distortion as possible, and you don't want something that feels super tight. I also think, whenever possible, you just want to get into a room when you can play with the open horn. So the way I've always dealt with the practice mute is, it's always when traveling, and even on planes at times, if I'm bumped up to business class, I actually have room. And with the Schmute or the silent brass, it's so quiet no one can even hear me with the engine noise. Or if I'm not in business class, I might go into the toilet when everyone's asleep, with the mute in and practice in there. But I still view that as just sort of as needed conditioning. And really, for me, there's no substitute for playing open horn in the room whenever possible. However, that's not an absolute rule. I mean, with all the times I play with Vizzuti, he'll often just sit backstage with the silent brass mute, and he does all his practicing in it. Yep. He's fine with it.
Yeah.
When we played together in Slovenia, we played with orchestra there back in 2009, and I was always trying to go to the hall to get in the room and play. And he was like, "I'll just stay in the hotel and shed with the practice mute." And he was fine with it. So people do have different preferences, and I think part of it is figuring out, is this doing any damage? If you don't feel like it is, and you feel like everything's still working for you the way it should, as it seems to with Alan, then maybe it's not a big deal. But if you feel like there's any kind of detrimental effect from playing with a practice mute, see what it is that you have. Make sure you have something that addresses those concerns as well as possible, and then just try to get into a room where you can play with an open horn as much as possible.
That's great. Cheers for that. Cheers for that, Ellis. That's a great question. It's something that a lot of us have dealt with, I think, during this lockdown. And Absolutely. A lot of people have found that, they've got used to this resistance that has come from the practice room, and then practice mute, and then they take it out and they've got to play a real gig, and then they're like, whoa, where's all that gone, sort of thing. And then, they've got this false sense of security, really. But no, that's great advice. Cheers for that. For anyone listening who don't know them, obviously the Yamaha practice mute you can get from Yamaha website, and for the Schmute, it's done by Trevor Bremner, who's a New Zealander, and if you look it up online, you can purchase that. He's a great cornet player himself, an absolute virtuoso. So he spent 3 years, I think, on the first one, and he's already upgraded that to another model, which is brilliant. So that's great. Thanks so much, Rex. How much time do we still have with you before your next lesson?
I was planning about 3:30ish. If that's, for me, that would be what, 8:30 for you, right?
So okay. So can I have
15 minutes or so?
Yeah, can I have about 10 minutes with you? Maybe 5 to 10 minutes? Yeah, cool.
Sure.
So guys, if you got questions, we've got a couple of people watching. So guys, if you got questions, please get them in. While we got Rex here, let's get them in. I won't play any videos, but can we touch on a little bit? You've obviously played with all these people, but I'm guessing a lot of it happened as well during Cancer Blows, because you were involved in that with Ryan Anthony, weren't you? Yeah, bless him.
Yes.
He's such a big loss to the world of the trumpet. Could you just explain how it was to... I think you put up a photo one time, and it was just like the table of gurus. It was insane to see in all of you guys, especially. And I've seen that photo of you with Doc, and it's like you're getting a lesson with Doc. But I think you're just rehearsing with him a duet or something like that, and you just got this look on your face, just of awe, And if it is, it's dark, but
yeah, exactly. It was, I think, like a couple of years ago in Indianapolis, there was a festival there, hosted by Larry Powell, who some of you may know, who's has his own HFL series, another great interview series, a wonderful guy. And Doc loves to practice famously in stairwells. So
Right.
we were rehearsing this piece, and he wanted to sit, and I'm like, I'm practicing with Doc, man. I feel like a little kid,
It was so
So
good.
at some point, Doc's playing, and of course, he's just still putting out this just a megaton of sound. And I look up, and Larry's holding the camera, and I'm just going, I can't believe this is happening. And that's a photo he got, and it's classic. And Larry is such a kind guy. He,
Yeah, he is.
as a
Yeah.
present, he gave me a framed
Oh, did
photo of
he?
that, and he got Doc to sign it for
That's
me.
amazing.
So that's sitting in my room here as a great souvenir from that experience.
So how was it to? Did you do a feature in that concert, or were you mainly doing the overall?
I on the one with Doc or with Cancer
The
Blows.
Cancer Blows.
I don't think I just had I think a solo on one of the pieces, one of the blues pieces, like
Yep.
I can't remember which piece it was. Um,
That's all right.
there's so many of us, so I got my own little 15 seconds of playing, and but mostly I was just enjoying what everyone else is doing. To have such a wide range of greats there, from Randy Brecker to
It,
Arturo Sandoval and
yeah.
Doc and Ronald Rom, and it was just
It must be
Mazzuti, and it was
just
just
an
funny.
incredible situation to be thrust into that. I'm just trying to find. I did have it somewhere. I did try to download it. The photo that you actually have as your. This might be it. See if I can drop it in. Yeah, there you go.
Oh yeah, and that's actually from the Cancer Blows event at
Get me out of
the
the way.
2018 ITG conference.
Is it? Wow. I mean, that was Yeah, it's such a great photo, and Doc having. I love Doc in
It
that
was
photo.
wonderful. It was Tim Anderson um, who took that photo, and shoot, I'm screwing up his name.
It's all right.
I'm forgetting the names of the gentleman who sent that to me. But when I saw it, I was like, "Oh, this is so classic." Between Doc's
So
pose
good. Yeah.
and Ryan there, and that was well before we lost Ryan. That I got that photo, and or when it was taken anyway. And so, yeah, that it was quite a. In a way, it wasn't a shock to lose Ryan, because we knew there was
Of
always the danger
course.
there,
Yeah.
but it was because he was always so optimistic and so strong, and people started, I think, getting maybe not the most realistic expectation that he was indestructible.
Yeah, I mean,
You know what I mean?
well, he demonstrated that he was indestructible. Like by, I mean, everything he was going through, his treatments, he's that, and then he'd come out and put the trumpet in his face, and it was like there was nothing wrong. It was just this beautiful angelic sound that just came out. It was amazing to watch. I do have the video myself. So, Mike has said, questions from partners allowed. Of course, Mike. Question from Lindsay: will you be doing another haircut video? Obviously, for our viewers that don't know, recently Rex shaved his head completely off, which your hair's looking great, dude. It's better than mine. Bloody hell.
Well, I my wife decided it was time to grow it back. That's how these things usually go.
Fair one.
And and it is getting colder here now, so maybe it
Of
makes
course.
sense. But
Yeah,
I
I don't
did
have
try
that
to point
luxury.
out to her. Well, I tried to point out to her, when I have no hair, I can wear any hat I want without messing it up.
Hey,
So
that is a good thing. Trust me.
you know, yeah. So but no, where I'm getting a haircut. I had my first haircut from my real hair cutter just a few weeks ago, and she wasn't really sure what to do with it yet. It was almost like wishful thinking. It's like, is it ready yet? And I'm
Yeah.
like, not really. But I'm going back. I'm going back next week, and hopefully she'll be able to do something more. I know
Yeah.
it's a bit of a mess right now. The
Um,
awkward stage between haircuts.
yeah. Right. I don't want to keep your ex, because obviously you've got to take a little bit of a break before your next lesson as well, mate. I wanted to get into some of your CDs, but we're running out of time. But like with some of my guests, we only touched on the surface of what you're producing. So I hopefully in 6 months' time we'll get you back on. Hopefully your 100 days of practice will be all in full swing. So
I hope
that's the
so.
plan. I just want
I,
to touch.
I
Sorry, go.
oh sorry, don't let me stop you, please.
No, no,
Continue.
no. I just wanted to touch through some of your albums so that our viewers know what's
Oh,
out there. Um, there's one I think I'm missing. Yeah, there is. It's your 1997 album. I think I'm missing from these photos down here, which I do have somewhere. Let me see if I can quickly find it
oh, Pandora's
before. It
pocket.
is such a good photo of you. It is old school, man.
Oh,
So
terrifying, right?
that's why I want to try and find it. I was like, where is it?
Show Lindsay that haircut.
Yeah, that is a. I was going to bring that up whenever the haircut actually got. Hopefully, I can find it quick enough.
That was when I was about 26 years old. That's the hairstyle I was sporting for a while. I'm not.
Was it?
It's hard to know what I was thinking. I think I trying to start fights with my appearance. I have no idea what was going on. But
Oh, where is it? Do-do-do-do-do. I don't have it. I'll have to find it again another time. I haven't put it in here.
that's
Have
right.
I?
We don't want to scare
Oh,
the
here it
children
is. Here it
anyway,
is.
Ben.
Here it is.
Oh,
Yes. Look at that. What a haircut. Love it. To be honest with you, maybe you should do your hair again like that. But like, tell us a bit about this. I haven't actually personally heard this album called Pandora's Pocket.
yeah.
What was the inspiration behind this one?
Well, this one has it's a jazz combo thing, studio thing, and I got to feature some of my favorite collaborators in Chicago at the time. So Kurt Elling,
Oh wow,
he's
yeah.
become quite a famous jazz vocalist now, is on a couple of those tracks. And Paul Wertico, who played drums with Pat Metheny,
Mm-hmm.
is on the album. A guy named Dana Hall, who's become quite well known as a jazz drummer as well, is on there. And some other just great players. Rudy Mahantapa is another wonderful saxophonist who's become quite prominent in kind of more avant-garde jazz circles in New York since then.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it was just a lot of fun. It's one of those things, with jazz, you don't have a lot of editing for these kind of tracks. Of course, you have a take and
Yeah.
you might do it maybe 2 or 3 times, and after that, the magic's definitely gone. And so then you just get what you get. You clean up the beginning and the end, and then you have an album. So they're relatively easy to produce albums. You just gotta hope you get what you're looking
Yeah.
for.
So I'll just quickly shoot through because obviously we're running out of time with Rex. Unfortunately, he is still a working and teaching professor, so we need to just quickly get these in there. So you obviously brought out an album called Masks. Let's get me out of the way here. So we got what have I done now? There we go. Yeah, no, just get rid of me. There we go. Right. So you brought out an album called Masks. You've also got Magnum Opus, which is a great album.
Thank you.
You did Foundation.
And all this traditional concertos.
Yeah, real traditional, which is insane with some of the stuff that you do as well. And then you also you brought out 2 jazz albums in the same year, from what I know, which is Bugles over Zagreb and Blue Shift. Is that correct? You brought them out the same year?
Yes, in fact, we released them at the same time. They weren't recorded at the same time. Blue Shift was recorded earlier, 2011.
Yeah.
The Croatian radio television big band concert there that we had was just a live concert. That CD that was in 2013, but we released them both in October of 2014. Did sort of an unusual kind of a double release for those albums.
That was, and you got a nomination as well, didn't you? Top 10. I think you got. I think it was.
Oh yeah, that was for
4 Bars Rest, I think.
Freedom of movement.
Oh, was that Freedom of Movement? Oh, that's my final one. Hang on, where is he? There he is. Bring him up to the front. How do I get him to the front? Hang on. Boop. There we go. Yeah, Freedom of Movement. That's a great album. But as soon as you brought that out, I was like, I got to check this out, and it was worth every penny. It was great. It's a great album. Everyone, go check them out, and honestly, check out every one of Rex's albums, because if you listen to it. You'll never actually think that it's the same player. You're like, surely he can't be doing this, and surely he can't be doing that. And then you got your traditional album, and it's like, he plays traditional as well. Yeah. Yes, people, he is disgusting. He is an amazing person. So anyway, Rex, where were we? Let's go back here, and we'll get rid of your
It's a
previous
scary
album.
photo. Yeah.
Don't want to scare people. They might have nightmares. Anyway,
I, I
I,
wanted to tell people about one thing, Ben. I had a
please,
meeting
yeah.
today.
I don't want to waste it. You only got 4 minutes left to let you know.
I'm
So,
all right. It's really, yeah, it's fine. It's
okay, cool. All right.
we don't have to rush out of here too quickly.
Okay.
But I have Peter Graham. We had a discussion today
Oh, of
about a
course,
new
yeah.
trumpet concerto, and I want to let people know to kind of keep their eyes out for that.
Yeah.
I'm very excited because, of course, he's known so well in as sort of a giant in brass band circles
Massively
as
over
well as
here,
wind
yeah.
bands. Yeah, and what a lovely gent. I mean, he's so great to chat with, and I'm just in love with his music. So I'm thrilled that he's doing this. It'll be we're still trying to figure out what sort of the thematic elements are going to be, programmatic elements, tying it together. We're throwing some ideas around today, but I'm sure it's going to be a wonderful piece, judging from everything else he's written.
Of course.
And that's something. One of the questions we're all facing is like for new pieces, like when did they get premiered? You know, I was supposed to be doing a premiere in February of a new concerto for trumpet, orchestra, and looper, because I started messing around with looper technology, and that's been postponed. We just found a new date, which will be April 23rd of 2022. So that's being pushed way back. Dana Wilson, some of you may know Dana's music. His music was on that album Masks. That piece Masks is probably one of his most famous pieces for trumpet. And Dana has also written a jazz trumpet concerto for me that we were supposed to premiere in the US last April, and in Japan about 10 days later for the Asian premiere.
That's such a shame.
And neither of those happened, right? Yeah. So we're still trying to figure out when that's going to be put on stage. There's a chance that I'm going to be playing with that Japanese ensemble, which is the Tokyo Wind Symphony Orchestra. Sorry, there's some different names they have there. Tokyo Wind Symphony Orchestra. About a year from now, looks like in early November. And so there's a chance that Peter's concerto may be premiered then, as well as Dana Wilson's concerto. So we'll see. We'll just have to.
And when's the time frame you reckon for Peter Graham's?
Yeah, that might be. I think Peter's actually going to write that very soon. Because I think he's got other projects coming up a little further down the road, and he's got a gap coming up. So it sounds like he may be cranking through that very soon. The problem is we just we'll get to perform it because no one's doing concerts yet, or at least not over here, and it's very hard for us to travel, of course. So maybe that premiere is also going to be with that concert with the Tokyo Wind Symphony in November.
Well, I'm crossing my fingers, Rex, for everything to go according to plan for next year, and everything opening back up, because it's always a pleasure to hear you, and it's even more of a pleasure to hear you in real life. Honestly, guys, if you see a concert coming up in the next year, book your ticket. I certainly will. I hopefully Peter Graham will try and do a UK release, and we'll get you over here, hopefully. And in Peter Graham, if you do see this video, hint, hint. And I personally will work really hard with stuff that I've got with work, and hopefully we'll get you out to premiere some stuff as well. That'd be really cool. Obviously we've tried and I'll keep trying until we succeed. So all I can say, Rex, is I can't keep you anymore because obviously there's other people that need your exceptional talents, but I can't thank you enough for coming on and sharing your wisdom and giving great information for hopefully a lot of people's inspiration in this situation. So
thank you, Ben. Thanks for having me. It's an honor, and what you're doing is service to the trumpet community, the music community, of getting people on to talk and share ideas and just we all need to try to lift each other up right now. These are such weird times, and this is a source of inspiration, and certainly for me, and I'm hoping other people might draw some positive energy from this. So Thank you so much, Ben. Really appreciate it, man.
Thank you, Rex. That's amazing words. I can't wait to see your what you come up with in your 100 days practice. It's going to be exciting. So everyone, keep your eyes down for that. Keep a look on the comments of this, or not even the comments, just the details. I'll have Rex's details there. You can book your lessons if he's willing enough to get you some. He's probably too busy, but you never know. It's worth contacting him.
That's all
Yeah, exactly. It's worth contacting. You know, as someone always said to me, you never know if you don't try. So get it in there. Keep an eye down. Look out for Rex Richardson's YouTube channel as well. There's some great stuff on there. And as Rex did when he was younger, watching people play and trying to imitate is exactly how he became the player he is. You could do the same thing as Rex has done. Watch his videos. Honestly, you'll be inspired. Rex, thank you very much, mate. For everyone else out there, stay safe, and I love your work. See you next week.